In this lesson, we're going to talk about prohibited or illegal items found during a search. So during security searches, there's going to be instances where prohibited and or illegal or restrictive items are discovered. It is crucial for security officers to be well prepared and knowledgeable about the appropriate action to take in such situations. So immediate and correct responses not only ensure compliance with legal and organisational protocols, but also help maintain a safe environment for everyone involved. So this section outlines the essential actions security operatives should follow when encountering prohibited or restrictive items during a search, emphasising the importance of the proper handling and the documentation. So let's start with items that are perhaps prohibited but not illegal. So depending on your assignment instructions or site policy, here's a list of items that could be prohibited. So personal alcohol. So as we know, many licensed premises prohibit customers from bringing in their own alcohol to licensed premises. Food items, including chewing gum. So many venues restrict outside food to maintain cleanliness in compliance with health regulations, and from time to time, that also includes chewing gum being brought in. Weapons or sharp objects. So items like pocket knives may not be illegal to carry generally, but they can be prohibited in many venues. Fireworks. So any form of explosive or fireworks are prohibited due to safety hazards on most occasions. Also things like laser pointers, often prohibited due to safety concerns. Dangerous tools. So items such as tools that can be used to injure someone or vandalise property may also be restricted. The things like paint or art supplies and marker pens, things that can be used to vandalise. So in order to prevent vandalism, often they can be restricted. Sometimes over-the-counter or prescribed medication in large amounts. Whilst not illegal, some venues may restrict medications that could potentially be misuse. Some venues won't allow in large bags or big backpacks. So venues will often have restrictions in place in relation to the size of bags and to enhance security and also to help manage their capacities. Sometimes maybe portable communication or recording devices. So in certain settings, things like cinemas or theatres, customers may be asked not to use a phone or even bring phones into the venue. And then things like cameras. So some establishments may not allow photography equipment, including professional cameras, to protect the privacy of guests or performers. And then there's things like the selfie sticks or tripods. Again, some venues may ban these for safety reasons. So let's look at the process of dealing with a prohibited but not illegal item found during a search. So the first thing is just to be able to seek from the customer reasonable explanations. So start by asking the individual to explain why they're in possession of the item. Okay, so for example, inquire why they're carrying, for example, a chef's knife or a tool in their bag, or request a prescription or identification to confirm that suspicious drugs belong to them. So it's important not to assume guilt until all reasonable doubts have been resolved. Another way you can assist is to assist perhaps with the storage of the prohibited item. So if the individual can provide a reasonable explanation for the items, consider whether you can assist by either safely holding the prohibited item, in line with your venue's policy. So for example, if the venue allows, keep it in a cloakroom, give them a ticket and then ask them to collect it on their way out. Alternatively, perhaps could they store it in their car or back in their accommodation? So if I just put my security officer hat back on again for a sec, and discuss now perhaps proof of authorization. So let's say, for example, an employee is trying to bring an item of interest in. It's either offered or it's revealed during a search. The individual may be authorized to possess that property. So for example, if there's no electronics being brought in and someone has a laptop, but normally the process is no laptops, they may be authorized. So the responsibility will rely on them to prove that authorization. And if in doubt, the some instructions will specify what constitutes acceptable proof of authorization or not. If the individual cannot provide a satisfactory proof or reasonable explanation for possessing the item, then the security officers must follow their assignment instructions. So the security officer should always ask the person being served to justify the possession of any types of items discovered. If the individual is an employee, you need to refer to your assignment instructions and contact the line manager or human resources for guidance. So employees should generally be permitted to enter the site, but the manager should be informed of the situation so they're aware. And if the individual is a visitor, then wait with them for the appropriate person, such as a contact manager, to escort the person to handle the situation. If the individual refuses to wait or they refuse to comply, don't forcibly restrain or detain them. And this may lead to accusations of wrongful arrest. to instead remain calm and explain the consequences of refusal while reiterating the need for their cooperation. So, considering conducting a search then and finding medication, security officers should use discretion to determine whether the individual is authorised to possess it or not. So there's certain controlled medications that will require a prescription to be legal to possess. Most individuals with such medication typically inform staff and may present evidence of prescription along with the medication. If no proof can be provided or the medication is packaged in a suspicious manner, for example in like a pill bag rather than a blister pack, the item should be considered confiscation due to their inability to identify the substance and a lack of proof of ownership. It's also essential to remember that some individuals on controlled medication must take their medication at specific times. Therefore, if faced with resistance from someone claiming they can't surrender the medication for health reasons, security officers could explain that they are not authorised to return them. So if the individual prefers to wait, the police can be contacted and then they have the authority to evaluate the situation, potentially return the item. So whilst the police may also not be able to identify the substance immediately without forensic testing, but they won't, if the individual agrees to wait, that may indicate or very likely indicate that they are actually telling the truth. So in such cases, consideration can be given to return the substance to the customer and allowing them entry or refunding their entry fee, whatever the policy may be. With all searches, ensure that all necessary documentation is filled out after a search, including things like incident report, detailing the situation and actions that you took. Accurate documentation is essential for accountability and for future reference. Okay, so let's now go on to dealing with illegal items, illegal drugs. So any controlled substances classified under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, such as things like cannabis, heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, MDMA, hallucinogens, etc. Okay, they are all illegal. Weapons. So this includes things like firearms and certain types of knives, such as flip knives, or those with blades longer than 3 inches, as well as things like martial arts weapons, knuckle dusters, etc. Other things that are illegal are stolen goods. So any items obtained through theft. So for example, we're doing a bag search and there's a large amount of the same wrapped items discovered within a bag during a search, that would be very suspicious. Imagine doing a bag search and you just literally 10 brand new iPhone, for example. That would be classed as very suspicious. So the following items I'm just going to list now are also illegal to carry without lawful authority or reasonable excuse. So things like dangerous tools. So items such as tools that could be used to injure someone. So like an ice pick, a screwdriver, a claw hammer, they're just normal tools, aren't they? But it really depends on the context. Why is someone trying to bring it in a nightclub? So if someone's trying to bring it in a nightclub, that normal tool now becomes an illegal weapon because of why else would you have it on you in a nightclub? Unless they've got a reasonable excuse. Oh, it's left here, it's left there, I didn't realise. But it's then down to you to whether, to better judge whether you believe them or not. Things like explosives. Now, once explosives, obviously they're illegal, but things like fireworks or any items that could be classified as explosives, illegal to have about a reasonable excuse or lawful authority. Unlicensed medications. So certain medicinal products require specific authorization to be sold. So possessing or bringing unlicensed medication into the workplace or licensed premises can also be illegal. And then things like banned substances. So suspected chemicals or biohazardous materials. So that could be used, for example, for an acid attack or as ingredients for explosives. Things like bleach, for example. Why would people be bringing bleach into a club or a pub? Perfectly legal item to use at home for your toilet, but again, it becomes illegal if the person hasn't got a reasonable excuse for having so. So let's look at the process now of dealing with illegal items found during a search. So if an illegal item is found, you need to prioritize the health and safety and consider the following actions based on your assignment instructions. So refuse entry or reject the individual. So we're looking at refusing entry or rejecting the individual if they're already inside the premises. Contact the police if necessary. Seizing the item. So if an illegal item is discovered, seize it and either refuse entry and eject the individual while also contacting the police. The other option could be detaining the individual. So if a serious item that poses a threat to safety is discovered, then you may consider detaining the individual and calling the police, and ensure both the item and the individual are handed over to law enforcement. But importantly, if drugs are involved, do not place them in that amnesty box, as it could lead to complications in legal proceedings because of the arresting police officer doesn't have the key to the embassy box and they need to have evidence. So dealing with serious incidents. So in the event of a serious incident, such as discovering a firearm or suspected improvised explosive device, IED, then follow your assignment instructions. This includes calling off the area, calling 999 and making the appropriate records. Complete documentation thoroughly. So you thoroughly document the incident, your own notebook, as well as report, as well as the search log. You should all details are accurately captured. And of course, you need to inform the management about the incident as soon as possible to ensure that they're kept informed. The storage of seized or found suspected drugs. So if suspicious substances are found during a search, ask that owner for an explanation, which they may help identify what they are. However, some individuals may not provide an honest explanation. So therefore, security officers should always exercise caution by avoiding contact with the suspicious substance to their skin. And they should not either sniff, taste, or inhale the item. I think that's kind of obvious, but So if the suspicious substance cannot be satisfactorily identified, then the matter should be referred immediately to the management in line with your assignment instructions, which may consider calling the police and handing the person and the substance dependent on the amount. So how about found items handed to security? So customers may approach a security operative to hand over a bag, for example, containing white powder that you found on the floor or it's in the toilets. You also may encounter items yourself while patrolling. So, for example, particularly nightclubs or busy bars, by the bar, finding things on the floor. So if someone does offer you drugs, look, I found this on the floor, it's important that you should accept it and deal with it correctly. Because of course, if you don't accept it, that person's now got it. So you'll take it off them for the purpose of stopping them from or someone else from having it. So you should do that. So when it comes to storing found or seized suspected drugs, care should be taken when handling suspicious items. Some chemicals can be absorbed through the skin by touch. Therefore, gloves should always be worn to reduce risk. So many nighttime venues will have drug embassy safes on site, which allows security officers to safely dispose of suspect drugs. But when placing drugs in the embassy safe, they must first be secured in a completed evidence bag, accompanied by a note in a relevant report book. So if drugs are seized during a search and the individual in possession has been arrested on suspicion of supply or personal use, according to the venue's drug policy, the substances must be enclosed in a completed evidence bag, but it doesn't go in the embassy box because the police need to arrive to come along and take that person with the drugs found. So if large quantity of drugs are found during a patrol, too large to fit in an embassy safe, or the site lacks a drug embassy safe altogether, then the item should be enclosed into an evidence bag and stored in the manager's safe until it can be collected. Make sure the action is documented in the incident book. If evidence bags aren't available, then you can also place the items into an envelope or a bag, clearly write a description on the front of the bag with a permanent marker or a borrowed pen and sign across the seal in front of a witness. And then the witness should also sign across the seal as validation and inform the relevant authorities about the situation. And the item then can be stored securely in the venue safe until it can be collected by an authorised officer. Okay, so storing seized or found potentially illegal items now, other than drugs. So the procedure for packaging items other than suspected drugs found during a search will vary based on the nature of the item and the associated risks. So given the wide range of items that might be encountered, of course, it's not feasible to cover all scenarios here in this module. However, security officers should always adhere to the principle of safety first and take reasonable cautions to protect themselves and others who may handle the items later. And so that's, for example, with needles and syringes, they should be placed in a sharps bin, which should be specially designed, puncture-proof, rigid container. If a sharps bin's not available, then you can use a glass or plastic bottle with a stopper until it can be safely disposed of at a local pharmacy or designated sharps drop-off location. Things like sharp-edged weapons, so items such as knives and box cutters, they should be stored in a strong cardboard box and secured with ties to prevent any movement. You need to preserve evidence. So it's important to take reasonable care to avoid any types of loss, contamination, or degrading of any potential evidence to ensure the integrity of the item is crucial for any subsequent investigations by the law enforcement.